Since the dawn of the GAA in 1884, the telling of its stories have been just as important as the sports. Through the years, heroes and matches have been immortalised, inspiring generation after generation. But some of its most important stories have also gotten lost or turned into legend. And in this series, we will explore some of the GAA's most fascinating forgotten tales, separating rumour from reality and myth from the truth that is often more amazing than the fiction. I'm Michael Foley.
And I'm Ciaran O'Hara.
So join us for Over the Bar, exploring the histories of the GAA. Hello and welcome to Over the Bar, or sift through the GAA's hidden histories. And I suppose the nature of this series, Ciaran, this thing that we do, that we don't really need to be particularly topical at any stage, really. But sometimes, things just arise that give us a decent excuse to tell a good old yarn, don't they?
What, like an NFL game in Croke Park?
Well, just exactly like an NFL game in Croke Park. Who knew? Who knew we'd have this to lean against? So next weekend, in case you haven't heard already, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers playing the Minnesota Vikings in Croke Park, which it's a bit of history in itself. First NFL game in Ireland, I think I'm right in saying, Ciaran, aren't I? First NFL game?
First NFL game for points in Ireland. So regular season game, yes.
Okay, first NFL game for points in Croke Park. Like, we've had college games here, as we're all well aware of now, warm-up games, but never the real thing. And we've seen, Ciaran, over years now, from the college side of things, that there is a basis for this historically, which we'll get to in a second. But even economically, like, we get, as journalists and in the media and all that, you get these emails all the time when you've got these big events coming saying, oh, this huge thing that's about to hit Dublin or wherever is going to generate X million for the economy. And they look like they look like numbers you could just pick out of the sky. It's like someone's picked up a calculator, just banged a few numbers, yeah, put that in the press release. But these college games and American football itself, it does kind of ring true, doesn't it? It's a good thing.
It's like crazy economic benefit. The ones, I know these games happen at the Aviva now, but kind of the original precursor was at Croke Park, and we'll come back to that. But I mean, I've heard things said like the largest non-wartime movement of Americans, or the largest amount of traffic for private jets at Dublin Airport, are all generated by these college games. So that's the College Football Classic, which, as I say, now occurs in the Aviva Stadium, Lansdowne Road. But this game next week, that's different level, because if you look at the cities that the NFL has tried to have these games in previously, we're talking about the great capitals of the world.
Yeah.
And for Dublin to get an opportunity on that stage, for Croke Park to get an opportunity on that stage, it really comes down to the thing we always talk about in America, or certainly in Irish America, that influence that the Irish Americans have. And in this case, it's about the influence of the Rooney family, the longtime owners of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it was almost inevitable that when this would occur in Croke Park, that it would be the Steelers that would be involved.
Yeah. And, look, it's going to be a very interesting occasion next weekend. It's going to be massive for the city. But, we're not here to sell tickets. They've already sold themselves, quite frankly. So I'm just going to ask you the very simple question that we're asking today is, when was the first American football game in Croke Park? You can give me the short answer first, and then you can work your way into the long answer. Stretch those legs.
The answer itself of the first may be very short, because there's scant detail, but there appears to have been, in 1946, a game of some description, an exhibition in Croke Park, which I've seen described as the first foreign sport to be played on the hallowed turf.
I see.
Although I have found records that actually baseball preceded, and we may come back to that. That could be another episode.
Yeah, I saw something just very, very roughly skimming over this because I mean, American football, to be honest, isn't quite my wheelhouse. We're kind of aware of kind of mad stuff having happened in Croke Park, rodeos and the like. These quintessential American pastimes, rodeos and whatnot. But I did come across baseball, all right. But that was like in the 1930s or something. Like wasn't there something like that? It was some kind of a.
There appears to have been some part played in the Tailteann games, and again, I do think this is worthy of us coming back to again. But the first American football game, there's very scanty tales for. It seems to have been servicemen returning from the war in 1946. They have held some form of exhibition. There's no record of who played, of what the score was, what the attendance was. So it almost seems like it may have been something very ad hoc. That ground has a crossbar and posts we can kick through, perhaps.
Yeah.
And maybe in years to come there'll be more detail on that. What is very clear is that there was a more formalized exhibition game in 1953.
Right.
And at this time, so what's changed in those 7 years? Quite a lot. So post Second World War, the Cold War has commenced. And that has resulted in a number of US bases developing in Europe as part of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. Many in the UK, many in France and Germany, and some in what they refer to as the Mediterranean theatre, so Italy and Greece. And the US Air Force had a very active American Football League at the time, which I think we can safely say, given that there wasn't a prevalence of overseas American football leagues, was probably the highest standard league outside of the continental US.
So how big? How big are we talking about?
So big enough that they had 3 conferences. They had their UK conference, they had their Franco-German conference, their Mediterranean conference, and that they played out this USAFE Air Force League between the various bases. They very often did so in highly recognized stadiums, and often for various causes. So the cause that they were playing for in 1953 was the Irish Red Cross. So it was a benefit match for the Irish Red Cross. It featured 2 bases from the UK. I think it's an early season game given the timing. So they seem to have had their season run, much like in America, in the autumn and the winter. And this game was on the 21st of November, 1953. And it involved Burtonwood Bullets.
Wow.
Which was the old Air Force base, RAF Burtonwood, in Cheshire near Warrington. Versus the Wethersfield Raiders, which was Wethersfield Air Force Base in Essex.
Is Weatherfield? Is that not like the local team for Coronation Street?
I did think the same when I saw it.
I don't know.
Yeah, the game seems to have attracted like a decent crowd. Like the estimates are that there was about 40,000 in attendance. So the game, like, it did cause a stir. The Hogan stand was completely full. There was a sizable crowd in the Cusack as well. From the time, if you were to check local papers and, there's stuff in the Monaghan papers about a train going from Clonus, especially for the game, and, trains from Oldcastle and Duleek and Meath. The Irish Red Cross, actually, they were running a bus from Clonmel for £1, which left at 7:30 in the morning. So this was like a big day out. In the lead up to it, you had the number 1 army band, so from the Irish Army, the Artane Boys Band, and the American Air Force Band. Like, they were all a part of the match entertainment, but prior to the game, they marched or paraded from Stephen's Green all the way to Croke Park. So, like, there's quite a bit of fanfare about this. Right. And I mean, the 2 teams themselves, they travel over the day before. There's 66 players in total, I gather. They travelled on 8 US Air Force transport planes, and they stayed the night before in Bray. And not to make it sound too much like a Cher music video, but there was 500 army personnel came from England for the game. And at the time, docked in Cork was a US destroyer called Handcock. And apparently all the sailors from there travelled up to Dublin as well for the game in Croke Park. So, like, this is a hugely unusual event for 1950s Dublin.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
The crowd that attended were somewhat bemused by what they saw. But the standard of the league seems to have been quite high. I've seen footage of the Burtonwood Bullets playing in the final in 1953 at Wembley against a German base. So, they've gotten around, and apparently one of these finals took place in Ravenhill as well. Right. Between a German Air Force base and a UK Air Force base. So it's well established. Obviously, the standard of play would be higher than your average startup American Football League, potentially in the UK. It is interesting, though, when we come back to, say, the 1990s, you may remember there was a World League of American Football. And there were American...
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, there were kind of European
The London
teams.
Knights? That the London Knights?
I think the London Monarchs. I remember Clive Allen playing for...
The London Monarchs. Who the hell are the London Knights? They're probably a male stripper troupe now or something like that. Something ridiculous.
Something like that. You had the Scottish Claymores, who I think...
yes.
Didn't Gavin Hastings play for the Scottish Claymores?
Ringing the bell, yeah.
There was a Frankfurt team. There was a Barcelona team. So this seems to have been formed in the areas where these bases had originally been, and they had built up some form of interest in American football. Now, funny enough, that does lead to an exhibition NFL game in Croke Park around the same period. So in 1997, the Steelers played what was known as the American Bowl in Croke Park. The game was on July 27th. Apparently, Dan Rooney, who was then principal owner of the Steelers, had wanted the game for Croke Park. He had been trying to get it for a number of years. He was able to persuade the Bears to participate because they also had an Irish-American ownership.
So Chicago Bears were there as well. They were the warm-up game in the 90s.
There was a crowd of 30,000 in attendance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. You're making grimacing faces. I'm making grimacing faces in my head. It's kind of, it's a long way from what we're talking about now. And like, actually, even before we come up to the 90s, I just rewind for a second back to the 50s, because my brain is full of questions, quite frankly.
Throw them out there.
So first of all, okay, I can understand you have a kind of a pickup football game, for want of a better expression, maybe in the 40s there. Maybe someone in Croke Park met someone else and went, yeah, come on, way down, we'll open the gates. On you go, whatever, just do it. But by 1953, this sounds like a more organized kind of affair. You've got conferences, you've got a charity element. I seem to remember...
They have cheerleaders.
Whoa, right.
Not
in Croke Park. In 1953.
Not in the sense that we would understand today.
Well, I'd say John Charles McQuaid might have something to say about the cheerleaders in Croke Park. What do we know about the cheerleaders?
Well, the cheerleaders were members of the services. You know what I mean? So
right.
I haven't seen photos of the event in Croke Park, but I have seen the footage of the event in Wembley, and the cheerleaders look like they are the female serving officers, and they're in their uniforms cheerleading.
Right. So
they don't. It's not the cowboy girls.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the cowboy girls with the pom-poms.
But they did actually,
to your imagination,
one point, cause quite the stir that probably the Bowl Archbishop wouldn't have approved of. At one point, the Air Force Band plays a tune which none of the Irish fans in attendance recognise or know, and the cheerleaders started jitterbugging on the sideline. which absolutely blew people's minds at the time.
But in terms of sort of like generating, okay, you said there was a crowd there. How do people even know it was on? Was there coverage? Like, was it a big media
no,
thing? I'm thinking it's November 1953, so like the national leagues are ongoing and stuff, but it's really it's kind of off season.
But what they have is a fairly well known Irish charity as the beneficiary. So the charity are pushing this. The charity at the time was headed by a man known as Lord Killannon.
Oh yeah, of course.
Who obviously was very well known in the Olympic movement. So who would have been in a position to influence the sporting press in Ireland at the time to get word out that this was occurring. But it was an oddity. Like, it's not nowadays. We'll all have seen Any Given Sunday or even if we've never seen an NFL game, we've seen a movie or a TV series, or there's some cultural reference to American football that helps us understand the rules. This was like a sport dropped in from Mars at the time.
I can imagine.
And actually, one of the references that appeared in the papers was in relation to Martians. In the Irish Independent, in the aftermath of the game, they said that the players with their pads and helmets looked like a child's conception of visitors from Mars. The lengths that they had to go to assist the fans in understanding the game were incredible. In the lead up to the game, the Irish press had a graphic of a pitch and an explainer of the rules and the scoring system. In the ground itself, they had a running commentary over the tannoy so that people would understand better. But even that didn't really assist, because they had enough power to generate for the tannoy in the Hogan stand, but it wasn't going to be strong enough for them in the Cusack stand. So they actually, some guy had to go out and get a car battery to generate extra power, and still the tannoy wasn't effective enough. And the reaction post-match in the papers is something to behold. I'll give you a quote from the Evening Herald. "To the spectator, an American football game is more like being at the races than a game of football here. There are short periods of intense activity, followed by longish periods when the spectator can relax, as nothing seems to be happening. When at work, they, i.e. the Americans, are go-getters, anxious to complete the job in the shortest time. When they turn to play, however, they seem to want to spin out the game as long as possible. They lay on the pomp and ceremony as thickly as possible to ensure that enjoyment will be prolonged to the uttermost." So, like, the bands, the cheerleaders is not going down too well here. In the Sunday Indo, this was the day after the game, it said, "It was evident that American football cannot be learned in a day." And probably the most damning of the lot is from the Examiner at the time. "There was very little running and practically no kicking." So, I don't know, were they expecting a game, something similar to Gaelic, to break out?
Love the free episodes of Over the Bar? Then take your passion further with the Cordia Club membership. For €5 a month, you'll unlock bonus series and member-only shows, hear the podcast first and ad-free, and get behind-the-scenes access through detailed notes, a newsletter, and Q&As. It's the ultimate GEA history experience, curated by Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara just for you. Upgrade your listening, support the show. Join today at overthebar.club.
And it didn't really appeal to an Irish audience because it was broken up and there was stoppages and it took a long time to play out. They were used to watching hurling and football matches, which, while not as high scoring as they are today, certainly had a higher frequency of scores than this game did. And this also was a particularly one-sided game.
Right. Okay.
Burton would make the final of the USAFE that year. And they won the game on this occasion. I think it was 27-0. So it's a pretty one-sided game. And for all of those reasons, like, there's no reference to them coming back to Dublin afterwards. So it obviously wasn't the success perhaps that the teams were seeking. And maybe just the condition of Irish society at the time. We were neutral and these were armed forces teams.
Perhaps. One other thing occurs to me, actually, just when you mentioned the potential for conflict there. The ban, Rule 27. So how did GA make any sort of pretense at all? Or was the question asked at all about, as it stands at the moment, our own members can't play, in inverted commas, foreign sports, yet we can have American football in Croke Park?
So actually, one of the only instances where you come across reference to the ban is actually in piece in the Evening Echo about whether it's right to have American football in Croke Park. But it seems to be almost a spoof piece. Like it descends into tales of, maybe Gaelic football having been the precursor to American football and hurling being the favourite sport of the Native American. And that, after a tribal victory, they all pass around the peace pipe. It's stretching incredulity to suggest that hurling existed before lacrosse. But we know subsequently the wording in the rule gets changed to non-competing sports or something like that. So it's the fact that these are non-competing sports. They're very much exhibitions, I think, that makes it permissible for them to have the game. I mean, in Croke Park's official timeline, this is down as a foreign sport being played in the game.
But it's not treated that way at the time.
No, I mean, look, let's be
particularly.
honest. Let's be honest. It's not rugby or soccer or hockey.
Yeah.
The games that they deem themselves to be domestically in competition with.
So the upshot of this magnificent affair, this 27-0 rout of the Weatherfield Raiders by the Burtonwood Bullets, is that American football basically doesn't come back to Croke Park for 40-odd years. Was there a college game there? Did Notre Dame play there?
There was a college game in 96. And that's probably... That college game, again, while meagerly attended, seems to have been the basis for what we see now with the College Football Classic. That it was attended by enough people that they said, well, Dublin can be a venue. In those instances, though, there is a direct link to what we've seen in 53 because the game is Notre Dame against a forces college. So it's played in Dublin with the intention of members of the U.S. Armed Forces being able to attend from wherever they're based in Europe.
Coming off from all over Europe, yeah. Gathering of the forces, literally.
Literally. And I mean, I think one of the first games, again, when the College Classic resumes in the Aviva, involves one of the forces colleges.
Yeah.
But I mean, this American Bowl concept begins in the 80s. And it's an attempt by the NFL to use their preseason to internationalize the game. So at a time when you and I were collecting bubble gum and getting a Washington Redskins keyring with it made from balsa wood, or having the Dan Marino stickers or whatever, they were very successful in the 80s at marketing things. And it was on domestic television here or in the UK. Like, the NFL is growing in popularity. It begins these American Bowl games, but I mean, to the teams involved, this is just part of preseason training. They're having their camp, but instead of having it in Oxnard, California, they're having it in Tokyo or Mexico City or Sydney, or they have
Parnell Park.
Lots of these in London. No, Parnell Park, not quite. But they had quite a number of them in London. And then by 97, as I say, Dan Rooney has decided, I want this in Dublin. He's persuaded the Chicago Bears to come. All their staffs decamp to Dublin for this. So the teams are based in UCD. They're training in UCD. All of the things that you associate with the match have to come in from somewhere. Like the posts are coming in from the UK.
Where do they come from? The UK, yeah?
Yeah, there's a big screen in Croke Park for the first time, which is on the back of a lorry. Croke Park is emblazoned with Budweiser branding.
Right.
And this is at a time when the Cusack stand has been redeveloped. So we have the new Cusack stand and the old Hogan stand The terraces are not, well, they don't appear to be in use. The big screen is on one of them, and all I can see on the terraces are Budweiser signs. But they arrive in with the intention of training. That's what the teams deem the exercise to be. And they have lots of other activities that they go to Waterford Crystal.
Very nice.
Not surprising given that, Dan Rooney was the founder of the Ireland Funds, which he co-founded with Tony O'Reilly,
right,
who would also have owned Waterford Crystal and would have been based in Pittsburgh as the head of the Heinz Company. There's lots of connections there. Tony O'Reilly, who went to school in Belvedere, meters from Croke Park.
Yes, of course. It's actually a wonder, isn't it, that there wasn't a presentation of a huge Waterford Crystal bowl full of beans between, I don't know, Dan Rooney and somebody else before that challenge match, Ciaran.
That would have been a better trophy, I'm certain of it. But they did have a Waterford Crystal trophy for the American Bowl. And they got to see it on this tour. And I think Dan Rooney's wife at the time mentioned that she liked it very much. And suddenly the emphasis on winning the game amongst the Steelers players increased. It was like, oh, this isn't just... the boss's wife wants the crystal, guys. The boss's wife wants the crystal. So once they've been through that experience, now they're playing golf, they're doing all the touristy stuff.
Of course, lovely. It's pre-season. I mean, it's bonding. It's all the things that pre-season tour should be.
Yeah, and I mean they're fated wherever they go. I did find some press reports of players who received racial abuse at the airport, which was disturbing to see. And a couple of those players also talked in a very negative manner about food in Ireland and hospitality in Ireland, and I'm sure Bert Fulcher wouldn't have been thanking them for the endorsements.
To be fair, we're about, I'm going to say, 3 to 4 years before the real advent of the breakfast roll. So, I mean, they didn't get that opportunity, to have a sausages, pudding, hash brown, that fuel that drove the Celtic Tiger for so many years. They wouldn't have got that. It would have been quite, to use a lovely word you used earlier on, Ciaran, it would have been quite meager.
The history of the NFL could have been so different had the Steelers been introduced to the breakfast roll.
The breakfast rolls. I mean, I tell you this much, they wouldn't have waited this long to come back. That's for sure. Got to get me back to. Can we get some of those Centras open in the Steelers ground? Maybe get some stalls, Centra stalls selling breakfast rolls. That, I think would have been possible.
Now the game itself is a good game, and actually, it's broadcast coast to coast in America. It's the first ever broadcast on Fox Sports of an American football game, of an NFL game. So it's the beginning of a deal which ultimately changed the NFL forever. They've got all their top talent over to cover it. The Steelers have all their biggest ambassadors. The press are traveling from all the Pittsburgh papers. It's a big deal. It's probably everything that Ireland as hosts would have been hoping to achieve. There's a lot of discussion, and I mentioned the World League of American Football, about there being a World League franchise based in Croke Park. Now, I don't know where this has been prompted.
Yes, go on.
But I mean, Dan Rooney is immediately going, no, you don't need that, guys. You've got your own great sports. You've got hurling and Gaelic football, and you've also got rugby and soccer. You don't need a World League. And you're kind of going, is he being protective of a patch he wants for the Steelers, or is he being genuinely gregarious about the sports we have?
And by the way, because the first thing that comes to mind when you say franchise American football at Croke Park is, lads, who's going to get to play there? We're going to need the pitch for a while. And just while you're chatting there, I just said, I'll just go in and have a look at the 1997 championships. And it is interesting to note the All-Ireland hurling quarterfinals were on the same weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember them now. I remember them now. So Tipperary played down, won the game. It was played in Clonus. And on the 27th, so at the same time that the Steelers were playing the Bears, Kilkenny and Galway were playing in Thurles. Kilkenny won. People might remember it for DJ Carey scored a great goal. I think it was a great comeback. Actually, I think Galway were well ahead, and DJ came through and kind of solo, one of those classic solo runs, and finished to the net. He scored 2-8. So games had to be shifted. Was there
and football,
any whiff of objection to all this? You know,
but there was on the football side in particular, because I think there was a delay to a Leinster final at the time. I know Tommy Lyons was the manager of Offaly at the time, and he felt that the delay in a Leinster final could have some of the blame laying at this. It's a bit like, you know, when they have these big scandals now about a series of concerts coming into Croke Park.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
They don't tend to do those now mid-season, because they've shifted the season. They can have them immediately after their July All-Irelands. But at the time, this was a big deal, because the main stadium was being used for a quote-unquote foreign game.
Yeah.
At the height of the championship season.
Love GEA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
And again, for what it's worth, now the Leinster Football Championship was an elongated affair that year anyway, because there was 2 replays between Kildare and Meath in the Leinster semi-finals, which brought them up. So they played the first replay on the 20th of July. Then they took a couple of weeks break, which was no harm. But basically, the Leinster final wasn't actually played until the 16th of August that year. 16th of August, like.
Yeah, that's, you know, when we consider now that we're talking about the entire championship is done and dusted by the end of July.
I mean, the Leinster Championship alone, the football championship, took from the 11th of May to the 16th of August, which is pretty much, as you say, the length of an inter-county football championship now, or inter-county hurling championship.
Mm-hmm.
Mad time.
Now, a few things around the game of interest. There was a large attendance that came in, much like they're expecting now, of Steelers fans from around Europe, particularly from the UK, to come and watch this. And the fact that this year there was no American Bowl in London, so you have these probably UK NFL fans who'd gotten used to their Wembley exhibition, kind of went, well, we'll go to Dublin for the week. But they arrive for the week and they get unprecedented access to the team. They can wander out to UCD and watch the practices. There's no security around stopping them. They can mix with the press. So there's a lot of anecdotes about that side of it. The Cors were the halftime entertainment and flew back from Los Angeles for this. You know,
Gosh.
There's a few really strange things happening. I mentioned the Waterford Crystal element, but actually the game itself is quite a good game. It's 30-17, and as I say, the Steelers go out to play in a way that they possibly hadn't intended to prior to their arrival in Ireland. And some of them still talk very fondly of the game. But the one thing that from photographs and the video footage I've seen, you do kind of look at it and go, I would have thought they'd get more.
Yeah. Given that we would have had, by that stage, 1997, since the mid-80s, like you said, it had been on domestic TV in Ireland, Super Bowls, highlights packages, all the things that you mentioned. 10 years of people there. I remember I was living in Dublin at the time, and I do remember the Notre Dame game actually the year before that was there. I have no memory. I know where I was. I know where I was that Sunday. I was in Thurles watching Kilkenny Galway is where I was. I was on a terrace watching Kilkenny Galway. So, but it's still, you'd imagine 30,000. 30,000 is a sorry enough number, isn't it?
I lived around the corner at this time, and I don't remember this game. Now, perhaps that says more about me.
Well, I think we can all take our own interpretations from all of this, to be honest.
And I do remember that. I remember the one the year before, quite clearly.
Yeah,
because there's this mystique about Notre Dame, all that stuff. But I actually don't remember this, and I think it was the fact that it was a preseason game. Probably people had enough knowledge to know that this was the equivalent of a training exercise. Now, the RTE reports at the time show a huge novelty factor. They had their cheerleaders. Now, the cheerleaders, interestingly, were not their normal cheerleaders.
More army personnel?
No. These
maybe they brought back. Please tell me they brought back the cheerleaders from 1953 as a lovely goodwill gesture. You were here 44 years ago, and here you are now. There, whoever you are, in your tweed skirts.
Yeah. Don't put your hip out. No, the cheerleaders were World League of American Football cheerleaders. So they were the London Monarchs, Scottish Claymores, given the uniforms of the Steelers and Bears cheerleaders. Now, never one to miss an opportunity. The hawkers in Dublin were selling illegal merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And famously spelled Pittsburgh wrong on much of it.
I see.
Now, if you saw that now, you'd say, well, that's just them trying to avoid the copyright issue.
Could be any number of motivation behind it. There's a certain amount of artistic merit to what they're doing.
I'm sure there was. I mean, and in terms of how the media reacted, AP said at the time that the crowd of 30,000 were mostly baffled but enthusiastic.
So not an awful lot changed between 1953 and 1997, really, despite all the exposure we'd had to American football in the meantime.
No, but what it does seem to have sown the seeds of is what we're going to experience, which is that it made the Rooney family, particularly Dan Rooney, determined that someday there would be a regular season Pittsburgh Steelers game played in Dublin. Now, he's deceased a number of years now, and his son is running the organization. But from the point at the start of the year where it was talked about that there might be an NFL regular season game in Dublin, I think we were pretty sure it was going to be the Steelers. And they've since had this situation where the American football teams have been given territories that they have exclusivity in. We're now part of the franchise package.
It's all very formalised now, isn't it? It's formalised much more now than it ever was before in terms of promoting a game in somewhere like Dublin.
Yeah, they've had watch parties for Steelers now for 2 or 3 years, and they've been taking place in Croke Park. This has been their territory to exploit. So it was inevitable that when the game came, it was probably going to be them. And it does have a huge significance because, as I say, this is not one of the big metropolises of the world. This is not playing the game in Paris or London or Berlin or Tokyo. This is little old Dublin. So it's clearly being carried out by the force of will of the Rooney family. And, obviously, in the interim between the game in 1997 and this one, Dan Rooney did serve as the US ambassador to Ireland for a period. And during that time used to regularly talk about how much he would like to have had this happen. So, if anything, the legacy of the 97 game and of his ambassadorship is the game that's coming to Dublin now. And while we have thought that there was a much richer history of American football in Croke Park, actually it's limited enough. Because it does come down to, as you rightly described it, a pickup game in 1946, a benefit game in 1953, a college game in 1996, a preseason game in 1997, and now If you said that was the process of growth in a business that it was going to take, I don't think you'd get many investors, but let's see if it pays off on the investment for the NFL in this case.
Here we are. Yeah, look, and it is the future. Hopefully, from an Irish perspective, it would be good to have more of these things in Ireland. So hopefully, it's a future that's maybe somewhat tenuously embedded in its past, but still in all, it is what it is. Ciaran, that was terrific. Thanks so much for that. And I know that when I'm watching the Steelers and the Vikings, I'm sure my mind will wander to the Burton Wood Bullets, the Weatherfield Raiders, and I'll imagine Mike Baldwin down there on the line, and maybe, I don't know, water for the crystal bowl full of beans, and the idea of Audrey and Haley from the Calf and Deirdre Barlow maybe as cheerleaders for the Weatherfield Raiders. All these wonderful things across my mind, and I have you to thank for it.
There we go. But we do have a bonus for listeners, because there are other associations with the NFL. So to our Corja members, please do go to your membership feed, where we'll be discussing the history of Irish, or rather Gaelic playing kickers in the NFL.
It's that great. It's probably the real, in fact, maybe the only really kind of enduring NFL, American football, Irish conversation is, the kickers. How come it's just not full of intercounty standard Gaelic footballers cruising along, making good money, kicking balls over the bar here and there? But of course, as we know, it's a lot more complicated, and the stories of the guys who made it, such as they are quite complicated as well in some cases. But we will get to that. As you say, it's on our bonus feeds. So for now, thank you for listening. Like, rate, review,
subscribe.
Enjoy this. Subscribe. I'm getting to it. Subscribe, please do, if you enjoy all this stuff. And if you don't, that's fine. But be sure and come back next time for our next episode on Over the Bar, the hidden history of the GA. But for now, Ciaran, thank you again for that walk through Croke Park's American football history.
More than welcome. See you next time, folks.
We'll talk to you soon.